The Curate's Egg, Ashraf Ali Thanvi, Part 2. Timeline, Sources.
The more learned scholars that will be gracing our midst, inshaAllah. My prayer is that they'll be able to do justice to this vast subject and this personality. I'm here to just provide some reflections on this great man, a mountain of knowledge and gnosis, ma'rifah, physician and sage of the ummah, reformer of the masses, jami'u shari'ah wa tariqah, one who held together both the sacred law and the spiritual path, the Ghazali of his time, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi. And these things are not said just rhetorically. There is a tradition when we're describing or defining someone, when we're introducing someone, we put all of these titles on. But really every single one of these titles is very apt for this person, and none of this is being said with any kind of bias in any way. It's not done out of emotion. It is the truth, inshaAllah.
High praise indeed. So we return back to Professor Mian's thesis, Surviving Modernity, Ashraf Ali Thanvi, 1863 to 1943, and the Making of Muslim Orthodoxy in Colonial India. PhD thesis, Duke University, 2015. So the speaker that I introduced this video with describes the subject of our study in very high terms. He holds him in high regard. And you will find modern day Deobandis praising Ashraf Ali Thanvi, and I would say almost excessively. Some, when they praise him, and the coming videos I'll give you clips of it, they have such a loving tone and such a loving voice when they refer to him. This is an emotional, passionate form of love, and unfortunately it leads them to overlook some of the negative aspects of his personality and his life. And in this point, in this part, I want to go over in more detail the primary sources. The previous video series I did covered many different sources, simply because the Jamaat Tabligh, the divided house, there's been many studies done on them from many different perspectives. But when it comes to Thanvi, he had a huge output. So I'll give you here the timeline, and the timeline I will try and flesh it out over the course of a few videos. But basically, he's born in Thana Bhavan in UP, British India, and his mother dies when he's about 5 or 6, and it actually states that he had more of a closer relationship with his father after his mother died at that young age. He enrolls in a Deoband seminary and starts studying classical and medieval texts, and then he corresponds with one individual called Haji Imdadullah. Haji Imdadullah, an interesting character in his own right, introduces Thanvi to a mystic from the 6th century, 597 I believe he dies, called Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi is a well-known pantheist, meaning he believes that everything in existence is God. And Ashraf Ali Thanvi, because of his relationship with Haji Imdadullah, has a great love for Ibn Arabi, but later on he's quite embarrassed by him, and the words used by Professor Mian is he takes a cautionary stance towards him, because Ibn Arabi has some very problematic statements. Then he goes to a place called Kanpur, and he thereafter leaves in 1884 India for his first pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, along with his father Abdul Haq. He returns the same year to Kanpur in India, and he increases in his spiritual and meditative practice. He takes a second pilgrimage, and then this is where he has the formative meeting with Haji Imdadullah for 6 months. Thereafter, he's advised by Haji Imdadullah. Well, he's actually advised not to have any children. Again, this is not something that Islam recommends, but Haji Imdadullah recommends acolyte not to have any children, and he advises him to settle in Thana Bhavan. Thereafter, he has a year of anxiety, and the thesis actually mentions use of the word suicide, i.e. suicide being considered, but there is difference on that, and I'll bring the page and you can decide for yourself. He writes his seminal work, Beheshti Zivar, Heavenly Ornaments, which talks about the practices and the duties and the religious rights of Muslim women. Again, another problematic book. And he publishes his Tafsir Bayan al-Quran, a major Urdu translation and commentary on the Quran. And then he's actually made the Chancellor of the Deoband Seminary. He resigns, and then he ultimately dies in Thana Bhavan. That's the brief timeline, and that's his life. But in his life, we also have a split and a division that Professor Mian gives us, and he describes 5 stages: the formative years, the Deoband years, the Kanpur years, and the Thana Bhavan years, and then the final years. So I just want to give you a little bit from his first initial years, and it's basically bordering upon racism. So this is the first thing that I'll give you, and it states, this is on page number, it's in the first 50 pages because I don't have the page number here, but it's from the thesis. It states that Muslim families that self-identified as Ashraf, highborn, in Indo-Muslim culture were descendants of people from the Islamic heartlands, Western Arabia, Iraq, and Syria, and so forth. So these were the Indians that were in India, but they'd come originally from these Arab lands. And there were also upper caste Hindus. So this caste system was brought into the practice of these Indian Muslims. The problem here is Islam is not based upon any caste. The standard narrative within Islam is that an Arab has no privilege over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no privilege or no rank or status over an Arab except through God piety. But here, Professor Mian states that Thanvi approved of the social superiority of highborn over lowborn. Lowborn were called Ajlaf, Ashraf and Ajlaf. So he approved of it, and proof of him approving of this is scattered throughout his sermons and recorded conversations. You know, this is a negative point. We don't have approval over any highborn or lowborn. Well, Muslims don't do that at all. And here Ashraf Ali Thanvi is actually approving of it. And to prove that we're not actually making this stuff up, I'll give you screenshots of just how much information the author went through. So here is a breakdown that he quotes of a Muslim scholar called Muhammad Khalid Masood, and he says he meticulously studied his collection of fatwa and provided the following table. So here there are literally 3,378 fatwas covering rituals, personal status, contracts, marriage, divorce, exegesis, creeds, heresiology, mysticism, innovation, and judicial procedure. He also quotes sermons. These sermons are in 32 volumes of Thanvi's published sermons, and the pages are 15,428 pages of sermons. Then you also have fatwa, you've got sermons, you've also got his students, and his students here are mentioned. There are 2 lists. One contains 77 people and one contains 58 people. So these are his khulafa, his Sufi successors. So this is well over 100 people and thousands of pages, hundreds of fatwa, thousands of fatwa, and scattered throughout this fatwa is statements of Ashraf Ali Thanvi, according to Mian, Professor Mian, who has studied him in meticulous detail, preference of superiority over high class over low class. This is not becoming of a Muslim scholar. So these people that praise Ashraf Ali Thanvi really need to reassess their priorities. Many more videos to come. Stay tuned.
That's why he has not responded to my videos. And that's why recently he put on Facebook that Yasir, you make how many videos you want, I will not watch them, I will not respond to them. Clear sign of defeat. Clear sign that he's a coward. He cannot accept the truth. If you have the truth, bring